Hello friends and welcome to our channel. On December 18th, 1942, at the height of the bloody Battle of Stalingrad, in the very inferno of battle, in the area squeezed between the mighty Don and Volga rivers, near the relatively small Mishkova River, a fresh force was thrown into the fray, the Wehrmacht's 17th Panzer Division. Until this moment, this division, full of strength and resources, had been held in reserve as part of the powerful 57th Panzer Corps and represented a serious threat to the Soviet troops. With the entry of the 17th Panzer Division into the battle, fierce, merciless fighting began for the small, seemingly insignificant, but strategically important Kutor, hamlet of Verkhnekunsky. This Kutor, located on a crucial axis of advance, became a key point in the German command's plans to relieve the encircled Sixth Army. According to Soviet intelligence reports received from the front line, the Germans had concentrated an impressive armored force in the Verkhnekunsky area, around 120 tanks and self-propelled guns, preparing for a powerful counterattack aimed at breaking the encirclement around Stalingrad. However, if one carefully studies the archival documents of the Second Guards Army, which was defending these lines, it becomes clear that by December 21st, the enemy began to experience serious difficulties, feeling an acute shortage of resources, fuel, ammunition, and food, and generally losing their initial momentum and offensive impulse, despite achieving some local, tactical successes. And these local successes, in fairness, we must give credit to the German troops. Their courage and persistence were indeed very significant, and at some point even inspired the German command with hope for the success of the entire relief operation. Just imagine, elements of the 57th Panzer Corps, having broken through the Soviet defenses in the heaviest fighting, with heavy losses on both sides, nevertheless managed to approach General Paulus's encircled grouping in Stalingrad to a distance of only 30 to 40 kilometers. It seemed that a little more, just one more supreme effort, and the encirclement would be broken, and the Sixth Army, trapped in a steel trap, would be saved. It is here, in this extremely dramatic and tense situation, that the real historical puzzle begins, causing much debate, discussion, and conflicting opinions among historians and military experts to this day. Could Paulus's Sixth Army have been saved? Was there a real chance to break the blockade and link up with the advancing forces? This question is inextricably linked to another, no less important and complex. Why did Paulus, an experienced and capable general who had gone through the First World War and numerous campaigns of the Second World War, not decide on a desperate, risky, but possibly the only correct course of action in that situation, a breakout towards the advancing units of the 4th Panzer Army? Field Marshal Manstein, commander of Army Group Don, constantly returns to this theme in his memoirs, accusing Paulus of indecision, passivity, and inability to take responsibility, and Hitler of recklessness, misunderstanding of the real situation at the front, and a fanatical belief in wonder weapons. However, when analyzing the events of those days, we must take into account all the factors and remember that even in the sector of the front, where Army Group Don operated under the command of Manstein himself, the situation was, to put it mildly, extremely difficult, tense, and required maximum effort from the German command. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like this video so you don't miss new fascinating stories about World War II, as well as hear diverse, sometimes contradictory, but always interesting opinions of all participants in those dramatic events. We strive to present all points of view so that you can form your own opinion about these complex and tragic pages of history. On the one hand, Army Group Don, despite all the difficulties, did achieve significant tactical successes, exerted strong pressure on the Soviet troops, and pinned down elements of the 5th Shock Army, the 2nd Guards Army, and the 51st Army near Stalingrad, creating a real threat to the encircled Soviet troops and diverting significant forces of the Red Army from the main direction of attack. On the other hand, at this critical moment, when the fate of the Sixth Army literally hung by a thread, the Red Army, demonstrating brilliant planning and mastery in conducting offensive operations, launched Operation Little Saturn. During this swift and ultimately extremely successful operation, units of the 24th Tank Corps under the command of the talented General Vasily Mikhailovich Badanov dealt a crushing blow to the important German airfield near Tatsinskaya Station, destroying a large number of Ju-52 transport aircraft, which were vital for supplying the encircled Sixth Army with ammunition, food, medicine, warm clothing, and fuel. Thus, Manstein also encountered serious problems. His actions were constrained by the need to combat the Soviet breakthrough, and the front of Army Group Dawn was under constant threat of collapse. The battle group under the command of General Hermann Hoth, according to our archival documents, lost up to 230 tanks by December 20th, 21, which was about half of the total number of armored vehicles with which it began the offensive. These were huge, irreplaceable losses. In his memoirs, Manstein claims that Hitler categorically forbade a breakout from the encirclement without holding German positions in Stalingrad itself, which was practically impossible in the current situation. But the encircled grouping, rapidly losing combat effectiveness due to the lack of everything necessary, simply no longer had the strength or resources for this. In fact, the fate of Paulus's Sixth Army was sealed on December 23, 1942, when Manstein, under pressure from circumstances and taking into account the real threat of a Soviet breakthrough in other sectors of the front, was forced to begin transferring troops from the main relief effort to the sector of the front, holding back the advance of several Soviet armies on the western flank. As a result of this maneuver, which weakened the offensive potential of Army Group Dawn, the offensive first stalled, and by December 25th, units of the Red Army went on a decisive offensive and attacked the positions of the 57th Panzer Corps, which was pushed back to the Axe River area. Subsequently, the 57th Corps, exhausted in previous battles and having suffered significant losses, repelled flanking attacks by Soviet troops and eventually began to gradually retreat to the east. Thus, Manstein's counteroffensive finally failed, and Paulus's Sixth Army was doomed to destruction, which occurred by February 1943. In essence, the Battle of Stalingrad, especially the period after the start of Operation Uranus and the encirclement of the German grouping, represents a whole chain of mutual errors and miscalculations on both sides. Soviet intelligence initially failed to fully assess the size and strength of the encircled grouping, mistaking it for a much smaller force than it actually was, and therefore attempts to destroy it began as early as the beginning of December, which, although marked by local successes, led to significant losses among Soviet troops and prematurely depleted valuable reserves. For example, the 16th Tank Corps had to be withdrawn to reserve for replenishment and reorganization, as it suffered heavy tank losses. The Germans, in turn, prepared for the counter-offensive for too long, losing precious time, which in this situation worked against them. During the preparation, there were even some strange, almost mystical incidents. For example, when just before the start of the offensive, the wiring in German tanks was damaged by mice, which caused delays and disruptions in communication. Be that as it may, the fact remains. If the Red Army could have acted more effectively, competently using its reserves and taking into account the enemy's strength, then the Germans, even if they had improved the planning and conduct of their operation, could no longer have changed anything. The outcome of the battle was predetermined. Goodbye, friends. I was glad to see you on our channel. Don't forget to leave comments, like, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new videos. We are waiting for your comments and will be happy to discuss this and other topics related to World War II with you.